Hey gang, this is Masad Ayub from the Pro Arms Podcast. I'm here to remind you that our podcast is a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network, and I'm going to suggest you do what we do and check out the other podcasts at selfdefenseradio.net.
Treat every firearm as if it's loaded.
Never point a firearm at anything you're not willing to kill or destroy.
Keep your finger off the trigger until you are on target and ready to fire.
Always be sure of your target and what lies beyond it.
Hi, and welcome to the Polite Society Podcast, powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. We're recording this one live on Monday, the 11th of May, 2020. I'm Paul Lathrop.
Back from a time warp, I'm Rob Morse. On tonight's show, we'll talk with Kim Peters about guns, marijuana, and PTSD.
I'm John Richardson, and we'll talk about Massachusetts being ordered to reopen gun stores.
I'm Tracy Thronberg, and we'll hear about what happened to a bad guy who messed with the wrong Texan.
I'm Gary Doherty, and in one of our DGUs, we have one from the Martin Luther King Bridge. So climb aboard.
Strap in.
And hang on.
Episode 542 of the Polite Society Podcast starts right now. Well, I am back in the home studio. 3 years have gone by since the last time I did an intro. And Rob, what have you been up to since the last time you've been on the air?
More COVID crazy. Robin Sandoval from A Girl and a Gun Shooting League joined me on the Self-Defense Gun Stories podcast. Today I was able to join Bill Frady, and it wasn't a mad scramble to get to Polite Society, Paul. Bill's new time slot is, well, at least when I'm with him, is 3 to 4 Central Time. So I expect to look a lot better on your show. Anyway, I carried every day, tried practiced. I've been trying to find friends who will go to the range and train. John, how about you?
Well, we spent the Mother's Day weekend visiting our granddaughters. I took part of Saturday to cut more brush and build a longer shooting lane on the deer hunting property. And without the stay-at-home orders, I would have already spent 2 to 3 more weekends doing this and would have been able to do it when the saplings didn't have leaves on them, and I could see more of what I was supposed to be doing. Oh well. How about you, Gary? How are things in Chicagoland?
Things are great, and I rail every day about the crazy governor and the crazy Chicago mayor, but I'm just fine staying at home. I'm cool.
Well, did she get any new haircuts?
No, I don't think so. No, and I'm getting close to needing one too. And carried every day, pants on, gun on, and that's all I got. Crazy.
Well, I've had an eventful life recently. I won 2 raffle prizes today from Operation Blazing Sword. I won a concealed carry leather Italian purse, and I won a gift certificate from Dark Star Gear for a new holster, which is pretty cool. I officiated my first wedding last Friday. And last Friday evening, I had officers from the Austin Police Department in my backyard until sometime after 2 a.m.
I was reading about that on Facebook.
My husband works the night shift. And so, I don't know, 11:15 Friday night, I'm in my nightshirt laying in bed watching Netflix, and I think I hear the doorbell. But I'm not sure if it's on TV or if it's really the doorbell. And then I hear it again, and my dogs start barking and run down the hall. And so my heart starts beating quickly. I'm like, well, what do I do now? So, Surefire flashlight in one hand and my Glock 48 in the other, I tiptoe to the front door, and we have glass in the front door, and I look through, and I see a man in a uniform with an AR slung across his chest. And through the glass, I said, "May I help you?" And he said, Austin Police Department, we've got an incident behind you, and we need access to your backyard. And I said, let me go put my gun down, and I'll be right back. And so I told the officer to go meet me at the side gate, and little did I know that Scott had put a padlock on the inside of the gate, and I didn't have the key to it.
Oops.
So the officer walks through my house, and of course I've got cases of ammo and targets and all kind of crap everywhere. And I went, so do you know Sergeant so and so? And he went, yeah, that's my direct supervisor. And I said, well, I'm friends with him. I married his son tonight. Or this afternoon. And he went, yeah, I heard he got married. And so I let the officer in my backyard, and he said, if you would just not hang out in this area of your house. And I'm like, not a problem. And then, the helicopter started, and then the SWAT team came, and they broke a couple of slats out of my fence.
Did they let you join the fun?
I texted my friend, the sergeant, and I'm like, I've trained for this my whole life. I'm ready. Let me help you. And of course, I kept trying to call and text Scott at work. I'm like, you need to call me now. And he finally calls me. I'm like, really? You put a lock on the gate and you don't tell me? And now I've got the cops here, and they're having to come through my house to get to the backyard. Oh, he's like, the keys, blah, blah, right here. So I open the back door, and I'm whispering, officer. And he's like, yes, ma'am. I'm like, key to the gate, I'm putting it right here. And I just dropped it on the mat. And I said, and I'm going to bed now. Good night. And so I don't like my new neighbors at all.
Oh, the neighbors were the cause of the... Okay.
There was a man with a gun threatening to kill himself. And, So, other than that, I've been shooting twice a week for the past, 6 weeks or something, training for my upcoming Range Master Instructor class. And I recorded a couple of videos for the Guns 101 series on YouTube. Dana, what's been up with you?
After that, I got nothing.
No neighbors, no suicide, no SWAT team. Aw.
No, I'm only 2 miles from Detroit, and things are quiet.
My friend Tom Walls from Firearms Academy of Seattle said, Tracy, did you ask God for an interesting life or what? So,
yeah, with me, it's been pretty much the same thing last few weeks, working from home, and it's probably going to be another month or so. The governor extended her dictatorial isolation orders to the end of the month, but the state legislature is suing her over it. But she has said that the factories can go back as of today. She treats the whole state as one, and there are parts of Upper Peninsula and Upper Lower Peninsula that haven't seen any or very few cases of COVID, and they're being held as the same standard as the Metro Detroit area, which is the hot spot. Been carrying every day around the house and listening to great podcasts while I'm doing my best Tom Sawyer impression on the new fence.
Now, are you doing the Neil Peart or the Alex Lifeson part on that?
The Neil Peart.
Okay.
Amanda, what have you been up to?
Rage. That's what I've been up to, is absolute rage. I have been tracking different states that are trampling on our rights, right and left. They are trampling on our rights. And then every time somebody sues one of them, I'm like, go team, go. So in Ohio, we've just started our state doctor. I don't know what she's got an official title, but what I call her, I can't say on the radio. But our state doctor has said that 1,200 people are going to be randomly selected, sent postcards, and then a medical team is going to come to your house to test you for COVID. It doesn't say that they're going to give you an opportunity or an offer or say, guess what, you want a free test. They say they're coming and they're testing you. I'm just going to say, yeah, probably not. I need to dig deeper to see if we have an option or not. And because I don't know whether to go on a high alert or just be royally, we'll use the word angered.
When I was a kid, we had a phrase for that. You in what army?
That's coming to my house, you betcha. Yeah, that's kind of where we're at. And, you know, there's a spot where somebody's got to take a stand. And I'm pretty sure that you and your swab and your test tube is going to be where my stand is. And then the other fun part was that I had a chance to play with Rob Campbell's new AR-15. He just built one. I've
seen that thing.
And yeah, so he built one, and he has the body of it like a sunflower yellow, and the Cerakote guys called it the Murder Hornet. And so by the time he got done, he now has the Murder Hornet emblazoned on it and a couple stripes on it, and so it's yellow and black, and it is just cute as anything. And so he's having a great time with it.
You've got to tell him about the safety selector switch on that too.
The safety select. This was one of those 80% unfinished lowers that someone had sent to us as kind of as a joke, and the safety selector switch says Epstein didn't kill himself. So he now has the Murder Hornet that says Epstein, and so it's just cute as a button. Paul, what's going on with you and Susan?
Well, I went out on my run and got back Thursday sometime. I was delivering Monday when we recorded, and that show just released Friday morning. Got back Thursday sometime. I don't remember when. It was afternoon, I think. But Friday morning, I got to do something that I have been looking forward to for 2 months. I got to take my sweetheart Susan out it was Saturday morning we did it. We went out to breakfast Saturday morning. The restaurants here have reopened. There's limited capacity. They're doing the social distancing. Everything is, it was as safe as they could make it, but it was what, Susan? It was 12 hours after the order went into effect that the restaurants could reopen that you and I went out to breakfast that morning?
Yes, sir.
Oh, I was looking forward to that so much. And was the food absolutely spectacular? No.
Nope.
Did it matter?
Nope. Not in the least. We enjoyed the heck out of it. It was absolutely one of the highlights of my week. I really, really enjoyed being able to go out. It was even super early in the morning. We were there. We went to a 24-hour restaurant. We were there at 5 a.m. because we just...
We
were there. Yeah, you're right. We left by 5 a.m. We wanted to get out and have breakfast and have somebody else do the work instead of us doing the work.
And we're morning people.
Yeah, we are.
No, you're middle of the night people. It just pretends like it's morning for you guys.
We're late night people. Late middle of the night people.
Yeah.
Susan, your normal wake-up time when you're not going into work early is what, 3:30 a.m.?
Yeah, about that.
Yeah. And on the road, depending on, it all depends on the freight. I can wake up anywhere from, about the latest I ever wake up is 6 a.m., but there's times I'm up at 2 to be driving by 3. So, yeah, getting up for early for us is not a huge deal.
Sleeping in for us is a huge deal.
Yes. Absolutely. Nothing really spectacular in guns. Been carrying every day. That's about it. Been doing some planning. We might get into this at the close of the show. But right now, I want to talk about the Self-Defense Radio Network. Our show is one of the members of the Self-Defense Radio Network. I'm really proud that we started this, almost 3 years ago now the network started. And it's, as people on Facebook can see, it's got all kinds of great shows on there. We're There, Modern Self-Protection, Armed Lutheran Radio, Survival and Basic Badassery, Geese, Gadgets, and Guns. Bunch of great shows on there. Do me a favor, head over to Self-Defense Radio Network's webpage at sdrn.us or selfdefenseradio.net. You can listen to all the shows right off the website, or you can subscribe to them right off the website as well. One last thing, we are going to jump off to break. We do have, at the end of this month, actually coming up in a couple weeks, we've got Active Self-Protection coming up to do the Cover Your Asp tour in Sioux Falls. The range has been set, and head over to activeselfprotection.com, click on the training tab, and you can sign up right there and join us for training the end of this month. South Dakota is a free state. They will let you out in public. So come join us. It'll be a great time. We are going to step aside to break. When we come back, we've got our guest, Kim Petters, and we'll talk to her right after this.
It all failed before. Alcohol prohibition brought us organized crime, and no less alcohol. Drug prohibition brought us murderous, no-knock, wrong-house raids.
Police! Search warrant!
No, wait! The crack house is next door!
Now gun prohibitionists want laws to lead us down that same path. Don't Americans ever learn? Just ask yourself, isn't government the only beneficiary of police-state policies? Brought to you by Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership. Information available at jpfo.org.
Hey, and we're back. This is the interview segment of the Polite Society podcast, powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. Normally at this point, I would be introducing our guest, but I'm good because Amanda arranged this. I'm going to go ahead and hand those duties over to her.
Well, I am very, very pleased to be able to introduce Kim Petters. She is, well, you guys have heard me talk about the DC Project and the different state delegates, and she is the Delaware delegate of the DC Project, which is where I met her. But that's not why we have her here. We're not really talking about the DC Project, though I'm sure we'll blend it in. What we're talking about is the fact that she is an advocate for marijuana and marijuana in medical use, or just marijuana-free America and free marijuana in America, and being able to untie it from the restrictions of the Second Amendment. And she really has a pretty good explanation of the what's and the whys. And I think that we've done kind of a disservice to this topic just in ignoring some of it. And so we invited Kim to come along and to explain to folks the differing aspects of medical marijuana and how it impacts your Second Amendment rights. So Kim, thanks so much for joining us.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, you're always so welcome. So why don't you tell folks about give them a little bit of your backstory of how you became truly one of the leading advocates for marijuana and marijuana use and Second Amendment rights and all of that kind of tied together in one big ball of constitutional rights.
That's right. So how I got involved is I was a veteran. I'm a veteran. I served 10 years in the United States Air Force. And while I deployed, I was tasked with sending home all of our fallen. I did all the human remain missions. And so I took that home with me. I absolutely came home with PTSD. And, like many veterans, I was prescribed the, anti-anxiety medications, the antidepressants, and, addictive sleep medications. And I had heard on the internet that veterans were having a lot of success treating PTSD with cannabis. And I didn't like the idea of being on so many prescription medications. And so out of desperation, I tried it, and it worked. immediately. Long story short, we worked to pass a bill for people to have in Delaware better access to medical marijuana for PTSD. And now what we're trying to do is get people's rights back, their Second Amendment rights. Right now, medical marijuana is the only medication in the entire United States that causes you to lose your Second Amendment rights. And now, before anyone freaks out, because I do know this is a controversial topic, I'd like to explain a little bit why marijuana, cannabis, for me, is actually better than medications. Prescription medications, they're addictive. You can overdose. They have harmful, side effects. Cannabis, for me, so for example, I have this little tiny tincture right here. And just a few little drops of this has THC in it. It's an indica, which makes you sleepy. And I get this prescribed. I follow state laws. I follow doctor's orders. I'm not a drug addict. I've never been arrested in my life. I just choose this to help me sleep instead of Ambien. And, so I'll take a few drops and I'll put it under my tongue, and almost immediately I'm ready for bed. The problem with that is, in choosing something that's impossible to overdose from, something that's natural, something that's not harmful to my body, I have to surrender my Second Amendment rights. When I've never done anything that would warrant me to not be able to purchase a firearm otherwise.
Well, and when you look at what they have to say on the warnings about Ambien, that's the one where you drive and sleepwalk and don't do this and don't do that. I mean, so using that as a comparison is pretty amazing. Do you know what the backstory is? How did marijuana become the only prescribed or non-prescribed drug within the United States that you lose your Second Amendment rights for? Do you know what the backstory is on that?
Well, it's because it's federally illegal. And because of that, for the background check, when you go to purchase a firearm, it does say on 11E, so on the form 4473, line 11E specifically asks about marijuana use. And it says even in states where it's legalized or for prescription medications. And I think what's a little bit upsetting about that, for me personally, is I feel like it's completely contradictory, because, you always hear people, up in arms, oh, marijuana, cannabis, 11E, and you better not lie on that form because that'll land you 5 years in prison. And, I understand that, and that's why I haven't lied on the form. I do follow laws. But, 11E doesn't just talk about marijuana. 11E also asks about, also asks about any depressant, stimulant, narcotic drug, or other controlled substance. So now think about this for a minute. Someone who has chronic pain and they take a daily narcotic, technically, they should be answering yes on 11E, and they should be not denied. Or what about the person who goes home and drinks every single day? We know that, let's say 1 in 10, households have a child growing up in a home where the parent abuses alcohol, okay? But nobody asks about that. No one's concerned about that on 11E. When I've seen people act out of their minds on alcohol, you've seen people get into fights, you've seen people crash their cars, you've seen people do things that is unbecoming of them that they'd never do. You've seen alcohol destroy families. It's addictive, but cannabis doesn't do any of that. But cannabis is the only medication or the only substance on 11E that everyone seems to be so concerned about. And, it is a little frustrating because the Second Amendment is the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment doesn't say unless the ATF says otherwise. It's frustrating, especially for a woman who, all I really want to do is to be able to have this medicine that works for me, that I follow laws, and I want to be able to have a firearm too. I've already been in situations where I needed one and I didn't have one. 2 years ago, I was walking in downtown Dover, and I was walking through a parking lot, and a man came and grabbed me. And I couldn't defend myself because I didn't have a gun. And thank God there was a police officer in the parking lot at that moment. And then last week, we had a shooting. We had an active shooter come to the Bear Cemetery and shoot 2 people. And do you know that just 48 hours to the minute prior to that shooting, I was there at that cemetery with another veteran friend of mine. We were walking out in the middle of the open. We were planning a Memorial Day drive-through parade through both of our cemeteries this year because we want to honor our fallen and make sure our Gold Star families know that they're still, loved and recognized. And, had it been 48 hours later that my friend and I chose to walk through, we would have been taken out by a madman who decided to shoot people up from the woods, And I think about that, and I think about, 48 hours, what would I have done? Run for cover, and then what? Not had a firearm to protect myself when I've never done anything other than choose the safest medication available to help me with PTSD, and it works.
If I could, Kim, I want to jump in here quick. We're getting all kinds of comments on social media. I want to get to one of them in particular. I knew we were going to get a comment like this, and I think it's important to discuss it. Tom says cannabis is a controlled substance in FDA Schedule 1, and it chopped off. Going to the rest of it here just a second. Nope, that's it. So I think the problem really lies not so much with the state governments, but with the federal government. And the federal government, let's put it this way, both you and I know that marijuana is not as destructive a substance even as alcohol, and it certainly doesn't belong in the same category as cocaine, as heroin, or a lot of these other things. Where is it now in getting in getting marijuana legalized federally, or at least off that list?
Honestly, I hate to sound pessimistic, but that's not going to happen for a long time. That's not going to happen for years. And because of that, and because we know that it's not going to be legalized, it's not going to be D or rescheduled. There's too many people that would stand to lose money because of it. Let's be honest. Can you imagine what would happen to the pharmaceutical industry if everyone like me stopped taking medications because they now had access to cannabis? That's just one theory. There's a million reasons why I believe that it's not going to get legalized federally. And because of that, there have been bills put out both federally and here in my state. Federally, we had, I think it was HR 2071, and it was sponsored by Congressman Mooney and Congressman Massey. And what that did was it sought out to restore rights to medical marijuana patients like myself. Unfortunately, Nancy Pelosi would not put it up for vote, so that's not going to happen. And so then, here in my state, a large group of us got together, and we got with some principled legislators and senators, one of them being Senator Del Colo, and we had a bill that would at least restore firearms rights back to medical marijuana patients as much as we possibly could at the state level. And what that would have looked like, would we be able to purchase a firearm? No. But would I be able to have a firearm on me and not get arrested? Yes. And, unfortunately, that bill is not going to go anywhere this year because of Corona. And it's a real shame because we worked really hard for that bill. There's a lot of people who will not get a card because they don't want to give up their medical marijuana rights. And, we had that bill pass our state Senate unanimously. Then it passed the House committee, and it was going to be scheduled for House floor vote. But unfortunately, that's not going to happen this year.
Okay, so let's throw out to some questions from the panel. So first, Rob, you want to talk to Kim?
Well, Paul stole my question. Kim, I've heard you on a number of other shows. You are a very articulate advocate You said, I'm serving my country. I did it in a position of responsibility. It wasn't easy. I bear the psychological scars, and now I've had to give up a tool of personal safety from a law that was passed back in the 60s when people were experimenting with all kinds of substances. There are a lot of things about federal law that no one can explain from any rational basis, except now there's so many entrenched interests. You think it's going to be really hard to change this. Are there other advocates, hopefully they're as articulate as you are, around the country who are asking for the same thing?
There are actually. There's a whole group of us, and we all are actually working together. So Illinois, they went ahead and make sure that they put it into their legalization bill that that Second Amendment, that people would not lose their Second Amendment rights. And Oklahoma has amazing. They put in an awesome bill too that made sure that nobody lost their Second Amendment rights. And the police in that state, they believe in the Constitution, and so they don't care what the federal law says. They're not busting people for having both, if for no other reason, if no one's doing anything else wrong. I mean, you have to understand, no one's talking about getting high and then, having a gun any more than they're talking about getting drunk and having a gun. We're talking about personal responsibility. And, when you make people choose between a very effective, safe, and natural medicine and their Second Amendment rights, it really does cause a whole slew of problems. And, most people I know say that they don't care. They're going to have both. And by having both, they are breaking the law and they're risking a felony charge, and it's very frustrating, and I can say we've come along quite a way. I know Colorado tried to pass a bill, but unfortunately it failed. I know Maryland they had a bill out before. I'm not sure of what mass shooting they first had a bill and it passed their state Senate unanimously. But then the day that it went up for the next vote, there was a mass shooting that day. So everyone said, no, you can't, you know how that goes. The one silver lining, I am really, really, truly heartbroken that SB 79, the bill to restore rights back to people like me in my state, I'm really heartbroken that it's not going to pass. But at the same time, neither are any of the gun control bills that were out. We were being threatened with things like permit to purchase and whatnot. And so at the very least, at least that's a silver lining. But yes, a lot of other states are doing this. And we do have a group of veterans that we're all working together, and you're going to see bills like this stand up all over the country. And, traditionally when 25 states turn, it happens federally. So we're hoping.
Well, we do need to step aside to break. Kim, can I have you hang on for one more second?
Yes, sir.
All right. We will be back, folks, in about 90 seconds. We'll have more with Kim talking about medical marijuana, recreational marijuana, and firearms. Right back after this.
This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by the Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network. If you carry a defensive handgun, you need protection from the aftermath of prosecution. Even if you do everything right, you can be the victim of an overzealous prosecutor or even be falsely accused. That is where the ACLDN comes in. They provide immediate assistance when you need it most. If you find yourself under arrest, they immediately pay bail money and the retainer for your attorney. Additional funds are available for trial and civil proceedings. Beyond the money, they have far and away the best team in the industry, providing you invaluable information and training DVDs that are included with your membership, and who stand ready to work with your lawyer on your defense. People like Masad Ayub, John Farnham, James Fleming, Tom Givens, Emmanuel Capelson, Dennis Tuller, and led by Network President Marty Hayes. Initial membership is only $135 for your first year, and you get 8 incredible training DVDs and other educational material when you join. If you don't have tens of thousands of dollars to defend yourself at your disposal right now, you need to be a member of the ACLDN. Go to armedcitizensnetwork.org and become a member today. And please mention that you heard about them on the Polite Society podcast.
Maybe I should unmute myself. Live radio, folks. You get what you get. This is the Polite Society podcast powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. This is our second interview segment with Kim Petters. Kim, we've had a couple more comments on social media I want to get to quick. They've already kind of been covered, but let me bring this first one up here. Tom says, it's a federal law issue. FYI, I'm a pharmacist, not agreeing with the law, but is what folks are being held to. And then he also said, Schedule 1, high abuse potential, no recognized medical use, same category as heroin. And that's, I kind of think, what I want to tee off on, or I want you to tee off on here, is that THC and marijuana have been shown, especially with pain relief, and as you said, some anti-anxiety uses as well. There are medical uses for this.
Oh, there are a ton of medical uses, everything from, anxiety, depression, sleep issues, those going through chemotherapy treatments. It gives them relief. The fastest growing population for medical marijuana is the elderly because, it helps them with their arthritis and their joints and, people who have seizures and MS. I mean, there are truly endless amounts of medical possibilities, and there are documented patents, which, makes it so frustrating that being a Schedule 1, they're saying there's no known medical use, when clearly there are hundreds, if not thousands, of medical uses. But again, when you think about how many pharmaceutical companies would go out of business because people wouldn't need them as much. I mean, everything from even a simple Tylenol, which by the way, you can overdose on Tylenol, but you can get that, anywhere you want at a gas station.
One more group you haven't hit on yet that would lose big time. There are two groups, but one specifically is police agencies, because their drug fighting money would get cut a lot. And another group that I'm pretty sure is really against this are drug dealers. Now, they don't have a whole lot of political influence, but they're not for legalization by any stretch.
Well, you're right. But, as far as police officers go, you're right. It is a budgeting and funding thing. But at the same time, why would we want our police officers going after people for weed? That is a victimless crime. I mean, there are rapes and murders and, all these crazy, awful things happening where we really need to be using our police resources a whole lot more wisely. And going after people for pot, that's just counterproductive. It makes a less safe society. And as far as, the black market, quite frankly, you're right. It does, as long as the prices are right and the taxes aren't super high and there's not a government monopoly created out of it, you're right. It does hit the black market harder, and it does defund criminal activity. Yeah, that's right. That's correct. And criminals don't like that very much. Yeah.
Well, going back to the 1930s.
But it would make it.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, truly legalization would make for a safer society. And that's true. I mean, there's a lot of studies and arguments, but the fact is even teen use goes down. Teen use goes down because no, cannabis store is going to want to lose their license selling to a minor any more than a liquor store is going to want to. The We Card program, it works. We do it with alcohol, we do it with tobacco, and we could easily do it with cannabis. That's right. Let's defund criminal activity. Let's put our police resources to better use, and let's stop using this as an excuse to take away people's Second Amendment rights. Rights I fought for, rights a lot of veterans fought for. This is just this is unacceptable.
Well, going back to the 1930s and prohibition of alcohol, that worked so darn well.
Yeah. Prohibition doesn't work.
Well, okay, let's talk to the people who are in the undecided middle. They see some of their local high school kids who are not doing very well managing their lives. They're using any drug they can get their hand on. Kim, I think that those people with those concerns are concerning your responsible use versus what they see at the front gate of the high school. How do we help them differentiate one from the other?
Well, what I would say, so I have 4 children, and from second grade up to 8th grade, and I have one that's about to go to high school next year. And I mean, I know that there's pot in high schools. And I also know that, high schoolers will also get their hands on alcohol. But if we were to regulate it and make it so it's harder for them to get their hands on, that they can't just get it from anywhere because they don't have that ID, it actually does lower teen use. It truly does. I don't want teens using it either. I don't want them smoking cigarettes. I don't want them vaping off jewels. I don't want them drinking. This is about personal responsibility, and then when they talk about, well, if you have, I get asked a lot, well, how do you have cannabis in your house? Well, it's the same way I have prescription medications in my house or cleaning chemicals under the counter. I tell my children no, and I keep them away from them. I actually don't even lock them away. I don't have to. I tell my children no and they listen. That's my job in my household. And I don't need the government to tell me how to parent and how to keep my kids safe and make sure they don't smoke marijuana.
I'm going to jump in here again.
Thank you. I think that's a good defense, and it addresses their concerns. Thank you.
We have another comment. This one from Robert. I'm from Delaware and a medical cannabis patient. I'm now off 4 medication, with one was an opiate in the last 6 months. That's a heck of a success story in that testimony right there.
Can I say we hear those stories all the time, and not that this is necessarily Robert's situation, but if you're thinking about people who are getting off opiates, that means less drug addicts, that means less drug addict crimes. So in states that legalize, they have seen as much as a 25% reduction in opiate overdoses in their states. And states with really good medical marijuana programs have seen an average of 6 to 8% less opiate prescriptions being prescribed. That's 6 to 8% less possible addicts.
That's pretty amazing.
Taking addiction out of the community. Yeah, it is incredible. I would never be standing by this if this wasn't true. I would never do anything that would make a community unsafe or add any hardships to it. I am certain about what I am talking about.
Oh, definitely you are. The one thing that we have been talking about, my radio partner and I, is there's coming to the United States this battle of states' rights, and it's the states' rights versus federal rights, and where that battle is. And my money's really on medical marijuana or marijuana in totality being the states' rights battle, because it's kind of like they get ready and then they step back and then they get ready again, and that's kind of where I think this is. Do you think that it can stand up to this battle? Because I think that's what's coming.
States versus federal, when you think about it, right? So cannabis, we all understand, is federally illegal. And so people say, as long as it's federally illegal, you'll never be able to carry a firearm. Really? Because it's federally illegal and I can walk into a store and legally buy it. That's federally illegal to do, but it's allowed. The police are not going to push. They're not going to arrest someone for something that would get dropped in court, because we now have state protection. And I think the more states that stand up against this, it's with anything gun rights. The more states that stand up and, come together. And it all comes down to the Second Amendment in the Constitution. I'm not asking for any special privileges. I just want to be able to exercise my rights the same as anybody else. And, I'm hoping it is a battle between states, and quite frankly, some states defend what the federal government says, and some states defend what's best for the people of their state. And I think really it comes down to government and the political setup, unfortunately.
What we've really been talking about here is federalism. And traditionally, the police powers, by that I mean health, safety, and welfare, had been a state issue, not a federal issue. In one sense, the federal government should not be involved in any drug enforcement other than stuff coming across international borders, because it should be left to the states, because it's not an enumerated right of the federal government unless they're using the Commerce Clause, which obviously they are. Speaking back to your medical uses, my mother was in a nursing home with Alzheimer's, and one of the drugs that they gave her was called Marinol because she wasn't eating. It was an appetite stimulant. And basically, it had a synthetic THC in it. I have a hard time rationalizing why a synthetic THC is better than a natural THC, and especially at the cost difference. Money.
Yeah, you
money.
could probably
Who stands to lose the money? You know, it's one going back to states' rights versus federal. One thing that was interesting is so for SB 79 to restore cannabis rights to medical marijuana patients in Delaware, we have Congressman Lisa Blunt Rochester. When I approached her to sponsor or at least vote yes to the federal level bill that her entire state Senate voted yes to and unanimously, she wasn't willing to. So we have an entire state Senate that says yes, but our federal representative said no.
They want to give up the power.
But the issue to that is they are supposed to be a representative of the state. That's the part that they miss.
Agreed. I completely agree. This is a case where, you know, even in a blue state where there's a lot of legislators who want strict gun control and a lot of our Republicans who don't like marijuana, they all agreed on this. This is a no-brainer. I mean, when you talk about common sense gun laws, this is common sense. But Congressman Rochester didn't think so.
Makes you growl.
It does. I try to be understanding because I want to keep open lines of communication with her. And she did take quite a bit of time to correspond back and forth with me. But in the end, she still decided that she wasn't going to sponsor that bill, which directly affects my Second Amendment rights. And that's kind of what it comes down to for me.
I'll tell you, though, Kim, as Rob had put earlier, there is not a better spokesperson for marijuana use and Second Amendment rights than you. You're so well spoken. You're so knowledgeable on the topic, and no matter what kind of question we're throwing at you, you've really done your homework, and it shows, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you. It means a lot to me.
Where do people who want to get involved in this issue either learn more or contact you, Kim?
Anyone from around the country who wants to learn more, or if they're listening and think, hey, I want to do that in my state, I could get a group together. I will show you how to get a bill together, how to get sponsors, and how to get it passed. Or if you have a voter initiative state, I will show you how to do that too. You can email me at kim.m.petters, Petters, @gmail.com, and I will help you. I'll help anybody learn how to do this. And it's not hard. It is time consuming. You have the Second Amendment on your side and a few good patriots and some principled legislators, and you can get this passed.
Thank you.
Very cool. We do need to run to break. Kim, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's been a very interesting conversation.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, sir. Thank you, everybody.
You're very, very welcome.
Thanks.
Folks, we are going to step aside to break. We'll have our news segment next coming up, including a story. Massachusetts is forced to let gun stores open. We'll be talking about that when we get back right after this. This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by The Complete Combatant. The Complete Combatant is designed for a broad base of citizens that range from students that don't own a gun on up to advanced students that train often. The Complete Combatant offers several different courses that build upon each other, from avoidance, using verbal commands, and preparing for contact, lethal versus non-lethal decisions, your 911 call, interacting with the police, to even dealing with the legal system in the aftermath. The Complete Combatant courses are a layered approach for all levels of experience that will walk you through all the many stages of decisions while developing a game plan tailored to your skills and your everyday carry. Please visit www.thecompletecombatant.com and make sure you mention this ad to receive 15% off. Again, that's www.thecompletecombatant.com and mention the ad for 15% off. We are back. This is the Polite Society podcast powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. This is our news segment. As I teased going out of the interview segment, I think probably the biggest news segment, folks, is that the good folks over at SAF announced that, Massachusetts got slapped down and they have to reopen gun stores in that state. I haven't followed to find out if any have reopened, but I would be surprised if there haven't been at least a few that have reopened in Massachusetts. Does anybody know more?
I don't know whether or not anybody has actually reopened yet. I did read the judge's decision. It was like very short, 4 pages, which for a legal decision is pretty short, granting an injunction. It said basically gun stores had to be allowed to open, have people in by appointment, I think, maintain the social distancing, blah, 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 blah. And the case was brought by Second Amendment Foundation, our primary sponsor, Firearms Policy Coalition, and the Massachusetts group Commonwealth 2A. So definitely a win.
Can it be used in other states? John, what was the legal reasoning behind it?
I think the legal reasoning was saying that they were essential. The federal government had said they were essential. That it was a Second Amendment right.
Disparate treatment, similarly situated?
Yeah.
Okay.
Being that it was it was a protected and enumerated right.
Well, they kept, are they ABC stores in Massachusetts? Anyway, the alcohol stores were still open.
Yeah.
But, yeah, enough said. Okay.
Enough said.
All right. Any other news we want to discuss? I'm looking at topics over here.
Well, I found it. Yeah, actually, I do. The second topic: Mexico demands apology for Operation Fast and Furious. The president of Mexico, President Obrador, has demanded an apology from the U.S. for what I used to call Project Gunwalker, where the ATF allowed. Encourage guns to be sold directly to cartel members to be smuggled across the border into Mexico, which resulted in at least 300 Mexican nationals and 2 federal law enforcement officers being killed with these guns.
That we know of.
Yeah.
I mean, we know the 2 federal officers, Brian Terry, and the other guy was an INS officer, and I unfortunately my mind's blank on his name now. But I followed Fast and Furious for years.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and what the Mexican president said was, "Wow, there's a lot of violence, but I didn't do it. The problem came from my predecessor. Something strange happened. The cartels in Mexico were armed by the U.S. government. So did the president at the time, President Obama and his administration, talk to my previous president? Was this an organized agreement?" And rather than ask the ex-president, he asked Trump. the ex-Mexican president. And rather than ask Obama, he asked Trump, who gets to now go, oh, interesting. Now, what's interesting is there were people from the State Department in on Operation Fast and Furious. And when it looked like they might be called to testify, they were jerked out of the country so fast, I think they left their socks behind.
Not that I'm a conspiracy theorist, but I think that sometimes, you know that lawyer thing. Don't ask a question that you don't already know the answer of.
Answer to exactly.
Well, I'm sure he knew. Now you have to go.
I think that the request for an apology was not, let me just go back in history and say, you need to apologize for this. It was, sure. Oh, yeah, thanks for reminding me. Sure, I'd like to have an apology for this. Right? I think it's a setup. And I bet it is. I think that there's more coming.
Well, the whole operation was a setup to begin with. It was ostensibly to stop gun running to Mexico, when in reality, I think it was trying to build a case for more gun control in the United States. As it was in the 4 border states, if you buy more than one semi-automatic rifle in a week, it has to be reported to the ATF. And that was they kind of pushed it through. They were using that as part of the excuse.
Well, the other thing that they were doing in that same time frame, that was happening down in Texas. And we owned a gun shop in Ohio at that point, and they sent agents into our gun shop to take a list of all 223s. I think it was 223s. Of all of one caliber, but not any of the, the crossover calibers. But they wanted everything of one caliber documented as to what gun, where it was, and who it was sold to, but not any of the others. And it was at the same time. So we started calling around, and nobody really had an answer for what they were doing or why they were doing it. But they were making the rounds to all the gun shops to look for larger quantities of guns being sold. So there was more stuff going on.
Oh, yeah.
More conspiracy.
I don't know if we'll get to all of these news items. The 2 that I thought were interesting. Maryland Governor Larry Hogan is no great friend of the Second Amendment, but he did veto legislation that would have banned private sale of long guns. So I guess occasionally even a rhino can be right.
Blind squirrel.
Right, blind squirrel. And the other was, Dana, I hope you'll put in a footnote because I want to find out where this came from. There's a concern now that suicide, alcohol, and drug overdose deaths together could exceed the deaths due to COVID-19. Well, we know that unemployment drives addiction. We know that it increases suicide 3-fold amongst the unemployed. So it's long been my concern that the cure can be worse than the disease unless we're really smart about this.
Exactly.
I tend to agree.
And I will find where I found that headline.
If you could, I'd appreciate it. I'll give you a footnote when I write the article.
Because I'm going to tell you, we're not really smart about that right now. So yeah.
Right.
This is bad.
Is this quarantine the result of war by soundbite?
Could very well be.
It's
yeah.
You don't care about lives. Okay, we'll lock everything down, and everybody's going, wait, who gave us those 2 stupid alternatives?
I mean, I listened to ABC News before we went on the air, and you hear the questions coming from the 2 ABC White House reporters to President Trump. Well, how can everybody in the White House be tested daily, but all these other people can't be? Isn't that unfair? I mean, I think Glenn Reynolds, the instant pundit, had it right. We need to think of them as Democratic operatives with a byline.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
The media is looking for anything and everything to use against Trump. And I don't necessarily have to love Trump, but it's so patently obvious. It's pathetic.
We've got about 5 minutes left in the segment. I want to get to one more of the headlines that's listed up in the news segment, and I want input from our listeners, if you folks would. And if we don't get to it on this segment, we'll get to it as we close the show out. But the VP choice for Biden is coming up. And what I want to ask the listeners is, does it matter to you? Because to me, it's going to be the loser, the second place loser on the second place ticket. I even with everything going on with the economy, everything going on with the COVID-19, I think most voters are going to be smart enough to see where the problems lie, and I honestly at this point think Trump's going to win a runaway election. But
I don't think it's about that. I honestly don't think it's about that. I think that this is Rand Paul setting precedent and setting the future of what the party was. When Rand Paul started talking about where the conservative movement ought to be, 15, 20 years ago, we were like, you are off your rocker. And when you look at it right now, it is our platform.
Yeah, he was right.
So what they're doing, he started to turn the ship. So what happens is even the vice presidential nominee on the loser ticket, if what you're saying is true, even if that's the case, they're starting to set the tone. And you've already heard what Joe Biden started to say. They're looking for a female of color. So it isn't
Michelle Obama. That's what I've heard.
Yeah, it isn't just that they're looking for the best candidate they can find. It is, I'm looking for
the village people.
I've got to check this box. I got to check that box. I've got to, as a female in the engineering field in the 1980s, I lived the you got to check the boxes kind of stuff. And it didn't have anything to do with skill set, and it didn't have anything to do with ability. It just had to do with how did you look and how does it feel. And that's what they're going for. And that's the direction that they're trying to take the country. And the sad part is even when Trump wins this, and I fully believe he will, what's going to happen in 4 years? Who's going to be the next person? Because it is a pendulum and it is going to swing. And so they're setting the tone for where we're going to be 4 years, 8 years from now. And you better watch where that tone is.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I'm still a little unsure of whether or not Trump actually does win or not. I really hope he does.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm really scared about who Biden might choose for vice presidential.
So who do you think is the worst? I mean, or the one that would be the biggest challenge?
The challenge, I think, is I don't see Joe Biden finishing a full term.
I agree.
I don't think.
I agree.
I don't think he has the mental capacity. No, you're right.
And I think they're going to try, and somebody like Kamala Harris, give it a month or two, and she's going to be trying to invoke the 25th Amendment.
Mm-hmm.
Michelle Obama, same thing.
Yep.
Liz Warren might not be quite as much of an infighter as those two. Just the fact,
she's not as intellectually bright as the other two.
No, actually, I think she's probably a little bit more, but
see, I don't think you'll pick her because she's shrill.
She is.
I think it's solely tone of voice on her as to whether or not she would be picked, and it's the shrillness.
She comes across as a Karen.
Yeah.
Yes,
without the haircut.
Without the haircut.
Yeah, but John, why are you scared?
The economy was doing darn good, and then all of a sudden it implodes right when it really matters.
Conveniently.
I mean, we all talk. The media was all about the Russians. The Russians are. How do we know that? Let's go conspiracy theories. How do we know the Chinese are not trying to influence our election by imploding our economy.
We don't.
We don't, or even more importantly, gain power by imploding our economy.
How do we know it wasn't the Democrats that imploded our economy?
We don't.
We don't. But I mean, they do that good job on that on their own without the help of the Chinese.
Touche.
What's there's something, an interesting factoid. I haven't studied it enough to know what it means. It turns out that the rate of death in Democrat-controlled states versus Republican-controlled states, even excluding New York City, is 2 to 1.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa! Explain that one to me, y'all.
Well, I think you had something very good just recently, Rob, where you pointed out if you remove Detroit, Chicago, and the New York City area, that accounts for what, 1/3, 1/2 of all COVID deaths in the U.S.?
There's 5 counties in New York that account for 27% all on their own.
Yeah.
I think you're talking about a map that I saw that was called the Map of Thirds.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Where 97% of the U.S. is green. That's 1/3 of the COVID deaths.
And the problem I have with attributing everything to COVID is virtually, I can't say virtually, I'm going to say an overwhelming majority of the people who've died from COVID-19 also had other comorbidities such as obesity, heart issues, respiratory issues,
diabetes,
advanced age.
Right.
Where is it hit the hardest? It hits nursing homes and long-term care facilities.
Well, Governor Abbott just came out this afternoon and said that everybody who is a resident of a nursing home and everybody who works in a nursing home in Texas will be tested because of the high percentage of mortality from COVID-19 in this setting.
Did you see the lawsuits that are happening in New York for the fact that when someone is hurt and they're in the hospital and they come out, they typically send them to a nursing home for that interim rehab.
Yep.
Right? And so they forced the nursing homes to take COVID patients for rehab into the nursing homes in New York.
While they were still virulent?
Yes.
Yep.
Wow.
Whoops.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, folks,
they better find a New York judge and kill that one quick, because
no kidding.
Well, I mean, I look
at
the county that adjoins where I live, and they're probably in the top 5 to 10 in the state. But the reason is it's an older population, and 3 nursing homes got hit. I live in a much larger county. We've had 4 deaths. The county next door has had 24 deaths.
Well, folks, we are 20 minutes into a 15-minute segment, so
I think we're about to come out the other side.
Do we care?
Define we.
All does. All does.
Yeah.
Okay.
We are going to step aside to break, folks. When we come back, we've got our defensive gun use segment, and we will get to that right after this.
This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by Concealment Solutions. Jason Christensen makes the most comfortable inside the waistband holster on the market, bar none. The Black Mamba. Some of the other products offered are the Sidewinder outside the waistband holster and Python gun belts. Every product that Concealment Solutions makes has unsurpassed craftsmanship that shows in the fit and finish of the product. Visit concealmentsolutions.com to view all of the products available, and you can get 10% off your order when you enter the promo code POLITICS in the promo code box at checkout. That's concealmentsolutions.com.
Hey, and welcome back to the Polite Society podcast, powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. This is our defensive gun use segment. Before we do that, I absolutely have to go back to news because Charlie Chambers just commented on Facebook, and this is awesome. He says, Joe Biden's proposed campaign slogan, he's forgotten more than Trump ever knew.
Right on.
All right. As I said, this is a defensive gun use segment. And let me come back over here so I can pop this up. And these discussions are not legal advice. Some of us are trainers, but this is not formal training, and you need formal training. The defensive gun use segment is intended as information, not training. As always, the opinions of the hosts are only their own opinions and not those of any sponsors or other affiliations. Susan, our first one's out of Maryland. You want to take us there?
13 days after a Charles County deputy shot and killed a man firing a rifle, it has been confirmed that the gunman was shot first by a homeowner who was defending himself and his family. A spokesman for the Charles County Sheriff's Office says Dr. Dequang Tran walked onto the front lawn of a home on Spring Oak Drive on April 26th and began shooting at the house with a rifle. The homeowner inside, who has not been identified, returned fire with a small caliber handgun, wounding the doctor. The exchange of gunfire reportedly lasted several minutes. A deputy was in the neighborhood within 5 minutes of the first 911 call, which came from a person reporting a home invasion. The deputy, seeing the doctor with the rifle, then opened fire and killed the doctor. Several children and an adult were also inside the home at the time. One person, an adult male, suffered a graze wound, apparently from flying shrapnel. Investigators still don't know what set Dr. Tran off on his rampage in the neighborhood. No one has reported any animosity between Dr. Tran and anyone living in the cul-de-sac.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, for all of us that come home, go, I'm safe in my home, my castle, take off your gun.
Wrong.
Who would have thought that your neighbor's going to go off his rocker and start shooting at your house? Whew.
Well, yeah, Rob, I remember the story of there was a guy whose father was a mass murderer, and he wondered if he was a mass murderer, and he just broke into a house down the street and watched the people sleep for 20 minutes and then attacked them. And fortunately, there was two people in the bed, and one of them managed to get to their gun and shot the guy.
Wow.
So he was just trying to prove to himself he was or he wasn't?
Yeah, he was. Yeah, that was part of the story. Absolutely, yeah.
Ooh, that would be
crazy,
interesting. Right? I'm just trying to prove that I'm a mess. Not. Wow.
Oh, that I'm not, yeah.
Whoops, I guess I was wrong.
I guess I really am Ted Bundy Jr.
Wow. It was a very weird story, but yeah.
Oh.
So,
on to Texas.
To your point, Rob, any neighbor can go wacko at any moment. I mean, with the BS that goes on in the country and in this state, I fight that edge constantly.
Of being the neighbor?
Yeah.
Wowza.
I had wondered as I was looking at this if what set him off was the social isolation that everybody's going through.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Good point.
Thank you.
Is there anything to tell us how old this doctor was?
There was nothing in the article that gave his age, so
Yeah.
And I didn't continue digging.
On to Port Arthur.
Yeah, I think so.
At 6:30 p.m., officers were dispatched to a reported robbery in progress at a store near the foot of the MLK Bridge. They were told that the suspect had left the scene and was last seen driving east along Highway 82. They spoke to a man and a woman at the Island Grocery who told them a man armed with a rifle had attempted to steal their car. During their interview of the couple, another report came in on a shooting about 3 or 4 miles away. Officers headed to the scene of the shooting, where they found a suspect reaching neighborhood temperature. The suspect, still armed with the rifle, had attempted to rob another man and woman at gunpoint. He demanded money and property from the pair, and at some point, the man was able to get to his car and grab a handgun. The two men then got into a shootout. The robber was shot several times. The woman was treated at the scene by medics for minor injuries she received. The dead criminal was driving a car reported stolen in Louisiana. Port Arthur police are still investigating.
Well, I'm going to jump in first on this one, and I got to, again, say pants on, gun on. Your car is a terrible holster. Your draw time is incredibly long if you've got to go back to your car to get your gun.
0 to 60.
Yeah, exactly. And if you can get to your car, well, solo, if you can get to your car, get out of there. Couple, there's another story. But yeah, keep your if you're gonna bring your gun out in public, get a decent holster, get a little bit of training, carry the damn thing on your body.
My question is, were they already in the car or out of the car when the guy tried to steal their car?
Yeah, hard to tell.
I mean, if they were in the car, 2 tons beats
right
223.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The way it read to me was that they were out of the car.
Okay.
My question, which would be to Tracy, is without a license to carry in Texas, can you keep a handgun in your vehicle?
Yes. It cannot be visible.
Can it be loaded?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm wondering if that's why he had to get back to the car, was he wasn't licensed to carry, but he had it with him for...
Okay, dude in Port Arthur, if you happen to be listening, get a hold of our co-host here, Tracy. She'll get you a concealed carry permit. She'll put you through some of the best training around, and you'll be able to carry it on your body.
And she'll marry you at the same time.
Yes, I can marry you at the same time.
Marry you to someone else. She's already got that part covered.
If the person in Port Arthur, whoever we're speaking about, does not have a carry permit, I will donate free training for that person, only for that person.
Well, that's Port Arthur's not very far away from me. That area is undergoing.
A shithole? I'm sorry.
Whoops.
Undergoing a huge economic boom.
Transition.
No, boom.
Boom? Really?
But lately, all that has been thrown into turmoil. A lot of the oil field has been unemployed.
Yep.
But this is petrochem. So low oil prices, and these guys go, yes, more plants. Except, if you were on the part of the crew that was not deemed essential, now you're out of a job. But you're right. I can easily imagine somebody didn't go through the homework to carry concealed. Come on, think ahead. It's not that hard.
Yeah. I just, before John, real quick, I just need to point out, Tracy can't get you a permit. She can get you
I can offer you the training.
The training and the certificate necessary.
If you don't pass the background check, that's on you.
that is absolutely on you. I just had some students call me that I trained 3 years ago, and they never bothered to go through the process of getting their permit. And then they're elderly, and they decided to go to the gun store. And in the interim, the state changed the format of the certificate that I hand out. And the gun store told them that their certificate was no good, which was an absolute lie. And because it was good, the date that it was signed and handed out and all that kind of stuff, and it's still valid to apply. But again, everybody who goes through my class, everybody who goes through Tracy's class, she can't get you a permit. I can't get you a permit. I can get you the training and the certificate. And then it's up to you to follow through and do the rest of the stuff and qualify.
And just so you know, it's only good for 2 years. You have up to 2 years in the state of Texas to apply.
They didn't put a deadline on ours. Fortunately,
well,
for
in
this
Texas, you have 2 years.
Yeah. John.
Yeah, quick question for Tracy. So you're saying that if you don't have a carry permit and you have a gun in your car, the gun has to be concealed?
Yes, it cannot be on your body, but it cannot be laying in plain view. You know,
Interesting.
It can be on your front seat, and you could have a cup towel, a dish towel, a newspaper, a magazine over it. And that's fine.
Because for years, North Carolina was just the opposite. It had to be in plain view, or you would be considered carrying concealed.
Wow.
No, concealed is on your body.
South Dakota was the same way until we went constitutional.
Yeah, the Bombay method of carry. Jam between the seats with a baseball cap over it.
Yeah. I still don't. Now, don't do that, folks. Don't carry on your body. Do not.
Yeah, get a permit, carry on your body. Absolutely.
All right. At this point, I would normally say that we post each of our news and DGU articles up at PoliteSocietyPodcast.com. Please take a minute to share them with a friend, with the exception of I had GoDaddy blow up the Polite Society Podcast webpage. If you were to go there right now, all you'll see is coming soon, something very cool. We had some issues, and I had an issue with a person that I trusted to build the website, and some promises that weren't kept, and a few other things. And so I'm in the process of bringing it back under my control, and it's going to take a while. So
I can refer you to a dynamite, top-notch, first-rate, pro 2A web page builder who has been on the podcast before a couple of times. If you need somebody,
let's talk off the air. Let's absolutely talk off the air.
Not that she's giving a glowing recommendation there.
She hasn't built one for me, but she's built them for other people.
Tracy may feel somewhat moderate about this person.
Oh, I know.
No, that's not possible.
Yeah, we need to talk off the air. Absolutely, because there's another project I'm going to talk about on the other side of the break, and that I'm going to need some help with on that too. So. But we are going to step aside to break. When we come back, we're going to be talking about blog notes. I'm going to make an announcement about something I'm doing this fall, and we're going to start a huge push about that. But to get to all that, we got to go through this. We'll be right back.
Firearm Safety Institute is one of Northwest Illinois' premier firearm training companies. They provide superior firearm training to all levels of shooters. Gary Doherty has been a trainer and concealed weapons permit holder for many years. While living in Nevada, he carried legally and has the experience to train you to do the same. Firearms Safety Institute offers a wide range of courses designed to meet the personal needs of both seasoned shooters and those that are new to the world of firearms. If you are looking to apply for the Illinois Concealed Carry License, Firearms Safety Institute can provide you with the professional training that meets the state's requirements. Gary accommodates classes of all sizes and can provide individualized instruction if that is your personal preference. He's happy to work with you and your friends to arrange private classes and will come to your location and work around your schedule. If you would like to get your Illinois CCW or increase your firearm knowledge or skills, go to firearmsafetyinstitute.com to start the conversation. Mention the Polite Society podcast and receive a 10% discount on your training. Remember, that's firearmsafetyinstitute.com. Get your Illinois CCW today.
Hey, and welcome back to the final segment of the Polite Society podcast, powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. Before we get into the blog notes, and we have had no emails today, but we've had some great comments on Facebook as we were recording this. Thank you, everybody who's been commenting. I really do appreciate it. And I do prefer that over getting emails. But if you would like to email us because you aren't watching live, you can email on air at politicsandguns.com. And when I get home, because I don't get that email on the road, I will pop it into show notes the next time we do a live show from home. Your email will get read on the air. Before we get into the blog posts and shutting the show down, I'm going to go ahead and just put this out. I think I've teased it a little bit on the air. Starting probably later this week, I hope, I'm going to ask everybody to go to, and you should be able to remember this website. Amanda and Susan suggested it, and I fell in love with the name. Go to butdidtheydie.com. What is happening is I'm going to, and Gun Rights Policy Conference, folks, it's going to happen. It's going to be in Orlando. I don't know how many people are going to be allowed to attend live. So if I were you, I would get to the SAF website and register now, so that if seating is limited, you can get in live and attend live. But I do the video production, and I help with the planning for AmCon every year. And I do the video production for Gun Rights Policy Conference. Normally, Susan and I drive down. Well, this year, my entire team is going to be flying in, and the equipment is going to be shipped down. And a not so big secret is I hate flying. I hate flying with a purple passion. And so to raise funds and awareness, and mostly funds, I'm going to jump on my 1982 Goldwing GL 1100. Not Interstate, not Aspencade, a plain Jane Goldwing, stock 1982 motorcycle, almost 40 years old. I'm going to ride from Sioux Falls to Orlando. And I'm going to go from Sioux Falls to Atlanta in one day. What I'm asking for is for people to sponsor that ride. I'm looking for 1,000 people to sponsor that one leg, the Sioux Falls to Atlanta, at 1 penny a mile. It's $11.57 a person, or $11.47 a person. So I'm hoping to raise $11,470 for the SAF. This is a one-day ride in less than 24 hours. I'm going to cover that distance. There's going to be a ride the Thursday of GRPC week. We're going to be going from Atlanta to Orlando. It's a much shorter ride. It's only 500 miles, and I'm going to do that with a group of people. But the one down to Atlanta is a solo ride, and you're going to be hearing me going on a whole lot of other different shows and promoting that over the next month or so as we get set up to get this thing going. My goal is to raise, again, over $11,000 for the SAF.
So Paul, explain let me explain it. But did they die? It's a play on that thing where he's going to do an iron butt ride, and I'm saying he's going to be miserable, and Susan's saying he's going to make her ride along with him at some point. And so the end result was, okay, how miserable is he? He's going to be miserable. He's going to be whining. We're going to be in the comfort of our Barco loungers, and the website name then becomes butdidtheydie.com.
One T or two?
I don't know. The whole
butdidtheydie.com. It's two T's. Two T's.
Thank you.
Spelled out. Just take out the spaces. That's all you got to do.
Say it again, because I'm trying and it's not coming up.
It won't. I don't have the website set up yet. I just bought the domain.
I see.
So he's telling you in advance. But you're gonna tease the T-shirt, or is that another day?
We're going to be selling T-shirts, and Yehuda Reamer, the Pew Pew Jew, has designed them. They look awesome. We're going to be selling T-shirts. If you want to support the ride, it's $50. That sponsors the ride and gets you a T-shirt. The T-shirts
sold.
Yeah, the T-shirts will be given out at Gun Rights Policy Conference, or if you need them, no additional cost. We can have them mailed, but they won't be mailed until after GRPC in September. But $50 gets you a T-shirt and sponsorship of the ride. The ride is going to be 17 hours, 15 minutes of riding. That doesn't include time to stop for potty breaks or to put gas in the bike or anything like that. That's 17 hours, 15 minutes of motion. I'm hoping to get it done in 20 hours. I have to get it done in under 24. So I will be, every stop along the way, I'll be opening up the phone, doing the social media post, saying where I'm at and a little bit about what's going on as I'm fueling the bike. So there will be proof of what I'm doing. You will see the misery in all its glorious fashion, especially as we get to, I'm sure, the last 200 miles of the ride.
I want you guys to be able to see him walk at that point.
when he gets off the bike, we want to be sure and photograph it.
He's going to get off just like it's a bad horse.
Yeah, just the old cartoons of the cowboys, where their legs are about 3 feet apart as they waddle out. Yeah,
exactly.
Mm-hmm. So, but that's what's planned, and look for the website to come up in the next week or so. That's why I told Tracy a little bit we need to talk off air, and look for that to happen very soon. So let's go ahead and let's get to the blog notes segment of the show. And Rob, what's been going on over at Slowfax, man?
I've looked at this quarantine, and not surprising, the actions of our politicians don't match their words. If cops for not wearing a mask arrest you for not wearing a mask, then this isn't a public health problem. If we release violent criminals from jail and then jail peaceful shop owners, then this isn't a public health problem. If politicians go to the gym, go to get their hair cut, go to a nail salon, but you can't, then this isn't a public health problem. I cite dozens of examples. We have a political problem during an epidemic. Politicians want to control you. Please get off the couch, or we may not have a country left by the November election. Give your elected representatives a call. That's called This Isn't a Public Health Problem at slowfax.wordpress.com. John, tell me about No Lawyers, Only Guns and Money.
Jeff Knox had a post up about a week ago noting that there didn't seem to be any viable successor to Wayne LaPierre as all the potential candidates had been pushed out. This got me to thinking about organizational succession planning. Well-run organizations have a succession plan. Great organizations make it a priority and work to develop a pool of candidates. By any objective measure, the NRA's board of directors have failed, as there isn't a succession plan for when Wayne retires, dies, or is indicted. Please remember that Wayne is now 70 years old. The structure of the board makes it ineffective. More importantly, the board is composed of too many celebrities, as well as too many whose sole allegiance is to Wayne. Boards have a fiduciary duty of loyalty to the organization and not any one individual. The board needs to get its act together on succession planning, but I fear, as usual, they will do nothing. That and more is at onlygunsandmoney.com.
All right. Well, I would like to mention, everybody, please go to the Facebook group, Polite Society Podcast members or listeners, and look that up. We have a great discussion that goes on there every week. And that does do it for the Polite Society Podcast. I'd like to thank Kim Petters for joining us today. So for Amy, Tracy, Belle, Kat, Dana, Gary, John, Susan, Grant, Amanda, Monty, and Rob.
Until next time,
stay safe.
Be aware.
And we'll see you down the road.
The views and opinions on the show you just heard are those of the host and the guest and are not necessarily the views of any sponsors or other affiliations. But hey, not everyone is as smart as we are.